There's no place in America for this kind of violence, or any violence for that matter.
The central premise of the Biden campaign is that Donald Trump is an authoritarian fascist who must be stopped at all costs. That rhetoric led directly to President Trump's attempted assassination.
Hey, he's a beast, and he's ready to fight for this nation. He's ready to fight for us, and he's in it to win it.
An assassination attempt is contrary to everything we stand for as a nation, everything.
In the shadows of power, where decisions shape nations and destinies, there lies a dark, sinister force, a force that silences dissent, eliminates opposition, and alters the course of history with the pull of a trigger or the thrust of a blade. What happens to the world when a notorious figure is assassinated? And what happens when they survive?
There's no doubt about the fact that we are a horribly divided nation right now politically.
The Butler Farm showground doesn't have the look of a place which shapes history. But what happened beneath the flag of this nation could define this nation's future.
The attempt on Donald Trump's life on July 13th at the Pennsylvania rally is a stark reminder of the risks involved with representing an ideology to the masses.
Take a look at what happened.
The attack was carried out by 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, who was perched on a roof around 135 meters away. He shot multiple times with an AR rifle, hitting Trump in the ear. 2 people were injured in the attack, and Corey Comparatore, a 50-year-old fire chief, was killed trying to protect his family.
So hearing this is a little jarring, especially with them saying they found explosives in his car. That being a block away is quite terrifying.
It's hard to think that someone that grew up and graduated from the school that I go to now could do something like this, and not only that, live across the street from me.
Where Crooks grew up, neighbours are trying to reconcile the quiet boy who would wave but not speak with a would-be killer.
With this assassination attempt, I feel like it's going to swing everything in his way.
I think this is probably going to fire up a lot of people that support him, who were already pretty fired up.
You know, his head is turned. Pop, 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 pop.
It threatens to deepen the rift across this country. Already the events here are the subject of wild conspiracy theories.
The motivations behind political assassinations are diverse and complex, reflecting the intricate web of power, ideology, revenge, state interests, economic concerns, social factors, and personal psychology.
President Trump is making not just a comeback, but a reassessment of the world and the things that have happened to him.
The stakes are too high. The stakes are too high.
Each assassination carries its own unique context and consequences, often reshaping the course of history in unpredictable ways. By understanding these motivations, we gain deeper insights into the dark undercurrents of political life and the profound impact of these violent acts on the world stage.
Nobody should have to go through that. And so until he put his fist up, and even after, I was so concerned because you just didn't know what was going on. So yeah, that was very heart-wrenching for America. I remember my mom going through the assassination of JFK, and I just don't think it's something that nobody should experience.
Down on the ground, shot in the ear. Many people at the rally said while we were leaving, Donald Trump won the election tonight.
Every assassination has left its mark in history. One way or another, in every corner of the world, the greatest decisions have always had something in common. They are nearly always surrounded by death. In 2007, former Prime Minister of Pakistan, Benazir Bhutto, was assassinated during a political rally in Rawalpindi. A 15-year-old suicide bomber named Bilal plunged Pakistan into a state of turmoil and had lasting effects on its political landscape.
Extremists and militants feared that Pakistan would no longer be a safe haven for them, and they tried to prevent my party coming to power, or prevent me from coming to power with this attack.
Long live Bhutto, her supporters shouted today. Bhutto is alive. Her killer must pay the price for her blood. It will fuel the anger of protesters both here at the scene of the crime and around the country, who feel that they've been lied to by the government, that there's been a deliberate cover-up of what amounts to a massive security failure to protect this country's best-known politician.
President on his way to honor the man he calls a martyr for peace. With him, former Presidents Bush and Carter, and almost the entire political establishment of America.
In 1995, Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated by Yigal Amir, an Israeli ultranationalist. His death dealt a severe blow to the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, a conflict which continues to escalate in violence to this day. Every cruel, radical decision has a long-lasting impact.
For me, peace is first the readiness of the Arab leaders to reconcile, and I stress to reconcile, with the existence of Israel, because the essence of peace is reconciliation with the existence of one of the other one.
It has been an extraordinary day for the Palestinians of Gaza City, but it is still not clear if the peace process has really advanced.
The Prime Minister went to Brighton police station to tell newsmen about her own escape. She was awake and had just completed work on her conference speech when the bomb went off.
The assassination attempt on Margaret Thatcher occurred when the Provisional Irish Republican Army bombed the Grand Hotel in Brighton, England. Thatcher was staying at the hotel for the Conservative Party conference. The primary motivation for the IRA's attempt to assassinate Margaret Thatcher was the ongoing conflict in Northern Ireland, known as the Troubles.
Today, for the first time in 2 decades, soldiers walked the streets of West Belfast with no need to fear the IRA. They're not going home yet and may not for a long time, but it still must be hard to believe.
This conflict was marked by violent clashes between those who wanted Northern Ireland to remain part of the United Kingdom. Thatcher, as the British Prime Minister, was seen as a key symbol of British authority and resistance to the IRA's objectives. The assassination attempt, while failing to kill Thatcher, had significant repercussions. It highlighted the ongoing severity of the conflict in Northern Ireland and the lengths to which the IRA was willing to go to achieve their objectives.
My husband was in bed and all the windows went and the bathroom was extremely badly damaged.
Your own room?
Yes, we were very lucky. You hear about these atrocities, these bombs. You don't expect them to happen to you. But life must go on as usual.
And your conference will go on.
Conference will go on.
Thatcher's survival and subsequent response, reaffirming her resolve against terrorism, also reinforced her image as the Iron Lady. Resilience is a common theme. Whilst not everyone will side with an individual, it takes a radical mindset to attempt to kill the embodiment of a philosophy.
This government will not weaken. This nation will meet that challenge. Democracy will prevail. Last evening, and it was really great fun. And it was nice to see Henry Cato there, too.
Just to recap then, there has been an assassination attempt on President Reagan.
But if history teaches anything, it teaches that simple-minded appeasement or wishful thinking about our adversaries is folly. It means the betrayal of our past, the squandering of our freedom. So I urge you to speak out against those who would place the United States in a position of military and moral inferiority.
John Hinckley Jr. waited outside the Washington Hilton Hotel, where President Reagan was delivering a speech. As Reagan exited the hotel, Hinckley fired 6 shots, wounding the president, Press Secretary James Brady, Secret Service agent Tim McCarthy, and police officer Thomas Delahanty.
The president has been hit. He has a wound, we believe, in his upper shoulder. His condition, according to the White House, is stable. We do not believe that the president's life is in any danger. His assailant is in custody, or his suspected assailant is in custody. For news on that assailant and for news of any possible motive, we're still waiting. This is Norman Reese, News at 10 in Washington.
Reagan was hit by a ricochet bullet that lodged near his heart, but he survived the attack after prompt medical intervention. The motivations behind this attempt were markedly different from many political assassinations, as they were not rooted in political ideology or conflict.
How high is the price of freedom, but also how much it is worth, that price?
Instead, the attempt was driven by the personal and psychological issues of the assailant. The primary motivation behind Hinckley's attempt to assassinate President Ronald Reagan was his obsession with actress Jodie Foster.
I had the delusion back in 1981 that by shooting the president, I could impress Jodie Foster, which to me saying that now, it's ridiculous, but that's what I believed back then. It was in ways like a suicide attempt, just saying this is it, this is the end of my life.
Did you have any knowledge then that those letters were forwarded to the FBI? When was the first time you knew the FBI was involved in an investigation of the Hinckley letters?
The first time I knew that the FBI was involved was when somebody called me up and said, please come over and talk to the FBI. And that was also at the same moment, I think maybe 10 minutes later, when I heard about the whole Reagan deal. I didn't know anything about it until that point.
Hinckley began to stalk Foster, enrolling in a writing course at Yale University, where she was a student, and repeatedly tried to contact her. When his attempts to win her attention and affection failed, Hinckley conceived the idea of assassinating the President of the United States to impress her, believing that such a dramatic act would capture her attention and demonstrate his worthiness. Propaganda efforts can control the flow of information, highlighting certain details while downplaying or ignoring others to shape public perception. State-controlled media often play a pivotal role in this aspect.
The x-ray was taken at 7 o'clock this morning. The results were apparently red, and it was known at least a couple of hours ago that the president would be getting out. Dr. O'Leary warned that he might look a little bit thinner, and here he comes now, dressed in a red sweater. And he's coming out the front door with his daughter, Patty Davis, and Mrs. Reagan on his arm, both dressed in red. What are you going to do when you get home, Mr. President? What are you going to do when you get home?
Sit down.
After 12 days, the president back here at the White House. He, of course, was expected to be here 12 days ago at about 2:30 in the afternoon. That's when the assassin's bullet rang out. And, of course, the president then was taken immediately to George Washington Hospital.
Reagan's survival and recovery boosted his popularity and had significant implications for his presidency and public perception.
The pledge we all made then is still true, and we're going to keep that pledge, and that is to have a government that will be of the people of California. Partisanship ends as of today.
Reagan's secretary, James Brady, and his wife, Sarah, became leading advocates for gun control. Their efforts, culminating in the Brady Bill, left a lasting legacy in the fight for more stringent gun laws in the United States.
As the next requirement for a program for peace, I would assign a high priority to strategic arms reduction.
Under normal circumstances, President Ford could be expected to carry this state very easily. This is Michigan, and this is his home state. But these are not quite normal times because Mr. Reagan is doing very well. And so President Ford is having to fight for every vote that he can get here.
There were 2 assassination attempts on President Gerald Ford in 1975, both within the span of less than 3 weeks.
I now solemnly reaffirm my promise I made to you last December 6th to uphold the Constitution, to do what is right as God gives me to see the right, and to do the very best I can for America.
Lynette Fromm, a devoted follower of Charles Manson and a member of the Manson family, approached President Ford with a .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol as he was walking towards the California State Capitol to meet with Governor Jerry Brown.
He saw the hand of a woman come up between 2 people in the crowd, and she was pushing her way through the crowd.
And just about that time, there was another person, a red-headed woman, moved toward him. I couldn't see what she was doing, but all at once the president made a motion like this, as if he'd been punched or pinched or something.
Agent Bundorf reached and grabbed the gun with his right hand, grabbed her arm with his left hand, forced her arm down, and twisted the gun out of her hand, and he took possession of the gun.
Lynette's attempt on the president's life was due to Manson's influence. His helter-skelter ideals opposed world leaders. This, alongside Lynette's passion for environmental concerns, led her to attempt the violent deed.
You've got it stuck in your brain that I murdered somebody. What do you want to call me a murderer for? I've never killed anyone. I don't need to kill anyone. I think it. I have it here. You know, if I wanted to kill somebody, I'd take this book and beat you to death with it, and I wouldn't feel a thing. It'd be just like walking to the drugstore.
Do you feel blame? Are you mad? Do you feel like wolves about for French? Get French.
The second assassination attempt on Ford's life was carried out by Sarah Jane Moore, a political radical and former FBI informant. Sarah stood among a crowd outside the St. Francis Hotel, where President Ford was leaving after a meeting. Moore fired a single shot from a .38 caliber revolver at Ford from about 40 feet away, but missed him due to a heroic bystander, Oliver Sipple, who intervened by grabbing her arm as she fired.
What drove you to want to try to assassinate President Ford?
Well, everybody asks that, and the thing is that everybody was talking about it. They say, where did you get the idea? I don't know about the rest of the country, but in San Francisco, people were saying this all the time. Number one, we elect our presidents, we don't appoint them. And Gerald Ford was appointed, and he was appointed by a crook, if you will pardon the expression.
Moore was motivated by radical political beliefs. She later claimed she had been driven by a desire to make a political statement and had become disillusioned with the U.S. government. The attempts on Ford's life led to an outpouring of public support for the president and increased his visibility and interactions with the public, albeit under tighter security.
The group of pens is reserved for the Kennedys, and the Attorney General is entrusted with a half-dozen.
Robert F. Kennedy was campaigning for the Democratic nomination for President of the United States in 1968. He had just won the California primary, a significant victory that bolstered his chances of securing the nomination.
I do not run for the presidency merely to oppose any man, but to propose new policies. I run because I am convinced that this country is on a perilous course, and because I have such strong feelings about what must be done, and I feel that I'm obliged to do all that I can.
Kennedy was at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, California. After delivering a victory speech in the hotel's embassy ballroom, he planned to leave the hotel through the kitchen pantry area to avoid the crowds. Sirhan Bishara Sirhan, a 24-year-old Palestinian Arab, was waiting in the kitchen pantry area. As Kennedy walked through, Sirhan stepped forward and fired a .22 caliber revolver. Kennedy was shot multiple times. The fatal bullet entered behind his right ear, passed through his brain, and exited near the back of his skull. Several others in the vicinity were also injured. Sirhan harbored deep-seated anger and resentment toward Kennedy. He was particularly incensed by Kennedy's pro-Israel stance and support for the U.S. decision to send military aid to Israel. Sirhan felt personally and politically compelled to act against Kennedy. Sirhan was convicted of the murder of Robert F. Kennedy and sentenced to death in April 1969. However, in 1972, his sentence was commuted to life imprisonment after the California Supreme Court invalidated the state's death penalty laws.
With the assassination of Robert Kennedy in June 1968, there's a really interesting and important what-if question to consider in American politics. In the previous third of a century, let's say back to 1932, there'd basically been a liberal consensus in American politics. Franklin Roosevelt's election as president in 1932 created a period of Democratic Party dominance after a long period of Republican Party dominance, and creates a liberal consensus in America where most Americans are in favour of an activist federal government which tries to, bring about prosperity but also social justice. In all of that period from 32 onwards, there'd only been one Republican president, and that was Dwight Eisenhower, who was largely elected because he was a military hero. 1968 is a turning point in American political history because in 1968, Richard Nixon, a Republican, is elected president. The argument can be made that had Robert Kennedy not been assassinated, could he have won the 1968 election? I think that the tough thing would have been winning the Democratic nomination, but I think had he got it, he really would have had a very good chance against Nixon. He had all of that Kennedy glamour, Kennedy mystique. And in terms of the popular vote, Nixon's victory over Humphrey was close. So I think there's a really great likelihood that had he got the Democratic nomination, he would have won the presidency. It's interesting to consider that. To what extent did the assassination of Robert Kennedy affect the longer-term trajectory of American political history? Would the shift to the right, the shift to a more conservative brand of politics that dominated America for the next quarter of the century, would that have been different had Robert Kennedy not been assassinated in June 1968?
Kennedy's death led to an outpouring of grief and mourning. His funeral was held at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City, and he was buried at Arlington National Cemetery near his brother. Kennedy's assassination significantly impacted the 1968 presidential race. Many believed that had he lived, he might have secured the Democratic nomination and potentially won the presidency. Media coverage of political assassinations profoundly influences public perception and political discourse. The way these events are reported can shape narratives, sway public opinion, and affect political landscapes. Media coverage can influence public demand for policy responses, such as increased security measures, gun control laws, or new legislation addressing underlying issues. The assassination of Robert F. Kennedy contributed to the passage of the Gun Control Act of 1968. Being a martyr involves profound commitment to one's beliefs, often resulting in sacrifice and suffering. Martyrdom is a concept that transcends individual actions, becoming symbolic of larger movements, causes, or ideals. It represents the ultimate expression of dedication, courage, and conviction in the face of adversity or persecution.
With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated on April 4th, 1968, in Memphis, Tennessee, the assassination of this prominent civil rights leader had profound impacts on the United States and the civil rights movement.
I do plan to stir up trouble in some of the big cities in our country this summer. But my stirring up trouble will be righteous trouble to bring about nonviolent solutions. There is no doubt about the despair in the Negro community, and I don't think we deal with that despair by doing nothing. We've got to have outlets through which people can channelize their legitimate discontent.
In the early evening, King was standing on the balcony outside his room, room 306, at the Lorraine Motel. He was preparing to leave for dinner with colleagues. At approximately 6:01 p.m., a single bullet struck King. The shot was fired from a rooming house across the street from the motel. The bullet entered through his right cheek, traveled through his neck, and lodged in his shoulder. Despite emergency surgery, King was pronounced dead at 7:05 p.m. He was 39 years old.
I was deeply saddened last evening, as all men of goodwill must have been, by the senseless slaying of Dr. Martin Luther King. He was a symbol of nonviolence, and I hope and pray that his end would in some way bring people together so that we could solve the many serious problems of human relations that face us in this country of ours today in a nonviolent manner.
The death of Martin Luther King is a great tragedy, not only for people of the United States, but for all of us throughout the world. I couldn't foretell what the result will be, but we have lost a very wise counselor and a very constructive figure, a very constructive statesman.
I said, Dr. King. That was it. I said, Dr. King, just as he straightened up. I said, Dr. King, and the bullet exploded in his face. And evidently it came from this direction because he was standing at an acute angle, and the bullet knocked him up off of his feet in that direction against that ledge over there. And it knocked him off of his feet. Yeah. And we turned around immediately because we didn't know how many bullets were coming. But we turned around looking, and we were looking to see where it come from because you couldn't tell. You couldn't tell it was a shot. You didn't hear a shot? No, until it hit his face. It sounded like a stick of dynamite or a large firecracker.
News of Ray's arrest came first from the FBI chief Edgar Hoover in Washington. He said that Ray was carrying 2 Canadian passports and a fully loaded pistol when he landed at London from Lisbon.
The shooter was found to be James Earl Ray, who was apprehended and sentenced to 99 years in prison. King's assassination led to a wave of riots and civil unrest across more than 100 cities in the United States. This period of turmoil is often referred to as the Holy Week Uprising. Partly in response to King's assassination and the ensuing civil unrest, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1968, also known as the Fair Housing Act. This act prohibited discrimination concerning the sale, rental, and financing of housing. King's legacy continues to influence civil rights movements globally. His philosophy of nonviolence and his fight for racial equality remains central to discussions on civil rights and social justice.
The life and legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. find meaning in the words of a black slave preacher that he quoted many times. We ain't what we ought to be. We ain't what we want to be. We ain't what we're going to be. But thank God we ain't what we was.
Little was the name of the man who formerly owned my grandfather as a slave, so I gave it back. In America, I don't think there's any gradual coming together. There may be a gradual coming together at the top. A few hand-picked, upper-crust, bourgeois Negroes are coming together with the so-called liberal element in the white community. But at the mass level, I don't think there's any real, honest, sincere coming together. If there's anything, there's a widening of the gap.
A dark page in the annals of America has been written to the crack of an assassin's bullet. A nation mourns, the world grieves. The man who became 35th president less than 3 years ago is dead.
The assassination of John F. Kennedy, the 35th president of the United States, is one of the most scrutinized and significant moments in American history. President Kennedy was in Texas to mend political fences among the state's Democratic Party and to lay the groundwork for his 1964 re-election campaign.
The events and decisions of the next 10 months may well decide the fate of man for the next 10,000 years. There will be no avoiding these events. There will be no appeal.
A motorcade through downtown Dallas was part of his visit, intended to allow him to be seen by as many people as possible. The motorcade route took Kennedy through Dealey Plaza, a public park in downtown Dallas. The motorcade passed the Texas School Book Depository, a key location in the assassination. A civilian bystander, Mr. Abraham Zapruder, filmed the motorcade with an 8mm home movie camera. The assassination took place shortly after 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. It was recorded that the first shot likely missed the motorcade entirely. The second shot struck President Kennedy in the upper back, exited through his throat, and hit Texas Governor John Connally, who was seated in front of Kennedy. The third and fatal shot struck Kennedy in the head, causing massive trauma.
A man is captured after he is reported to have killed a policeman. That man is a 24-year-old pro-Castro Texan who once sought Soviet citizenship. He is charged with murder. Meanwhile, the president had been rushed to a nearby hospital where life lingered as a waiting world prayed. A half hour later, he was dead, his life crushed like his wife's abandoned bouquet. A shocked nation weeps.
The shooter was widely accepted to be Lee Harvey Oswald, who was confirmed as a lone marksman in the Warren Commission, a report established by President Lyndon B. Johnson. Conspiracies have since risen, many stating that there were multiple gunmen on account of the doctors who tried to save Kennedy's life in Parkland's hospital, who stated they confirmed an entrance wound on JFK's body, which did not match the direction of Oswald's location.
The assassin's aim is deadly.
In 1979, the House Select Committee on Assassinations concluded that Kennedy was probably assassinated as a result of a conspiracy, although specifics were not determined. The event left a lasting impression on American consciousness, contributing to the rise of conspiracy theories and skepticism towards the government.
If you look at John Kennedy at the time that he's assassinated in downtown Dallas on the 22nd of November 1963, and you compare that to the John Kennedy who's inaugurated as president on that freezing cold day on the 20th of January 1961, he's a very different sort of political leader. So in terms of foreign policy, I think the Cuban Missile Crisis is an educative experience for him. It really changes him. He becomes much more conscious of and concerned about the dangers of the nuclear age.
Oswald walks his last mile. His assailant moves in from the right.
There is Lee Oswald. He's been shot. He's been shot. Lee Oswald has been shot.
Now, from another camera, the motion is slowed. The murderer moves in, and here is the shame of all America as Jack Rubenstein takes the law unto himself.
Ruby claimed he acted out of anger and sorrow for Kennedy's widow and family.
Mrs. Kennedy begins the long hours of her public grief with the courageous dignity that has marked each moment of her ordeal. Caroline and John seem to mirror their mother's poise.
Kennedy's assassination is often seen as a pivotal moment that accelerated the civil rights movement, with his successor, Lyndon B. Johnson, pushing through landmark civil rights legislation.
President Johnson represents a sorrowing people. as he places a wreath marked "From President Johnson and the Nation."
At the start of his presidency, he's got pretty hardline views on foreign policy. So you have his attempt to overthrow Castro at the Bay of Pigs. So he launches the Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba. During the final year of the presidency of Dwight D. Eisenhower in 1960, secret planning within the CIA for an overthrow of Castro was underway. And the basic idea of the plan was to use Cuban emigres, so Cubans who had been unhappy with Castro, had fled Castro's Cuba for the US, in particular for Florida, take them, train them, equip them, and send them back into Cuba to stage a coup d'etat to overthrow Castro. Kennedy is briefed about this operation during the 1960 campaign, and when he becomes president, that is the first decision, big decision he has to make, is whether to give the go-ahead for an invasion of Cuba at the Bay of Pigs.
Held approximately 2 years off. Havana's ovation for Fidel Castro himself had been long deferred. These scenes show his triumphal march across the island. In his lifetime, the bearded cigar-smoking idealist has become a legend. For most Cubans, this is the first glimpse of the man whose name became a byword in months of guerrilla fighting. Many had no clear idea of his beliefs or his program, but knew only of his cause and his personal dedication. Now his words strike terrific enthusiasm. To his military victory, Fidel's of popular support, built in a matter of days by this hero's procession.
There's a conversation he had with a New York Times journalist later in 1961, and the New York Times journalist scribbled down notes in his journal at the time. He said, "I had a conversation with JFK. JFK said that he was under terrific pressure from intelligence people to okay a Castro murder."
Fidel Castro, the Cuban leader, reportedly survived over 600 assassination attempts, many orchestrated by the CIA and anti-Castro groups. Some of the methods used to kill the leader ranged from a poisoned scuba diving suit to an exploding cigar. Castro's survival contributed to his legendary status and the strained relations between the United States and Cuba during the Cold War. The methods and motivations behind political assassinations differ markedly between democracies and authoritarian regimes, shaped by the respective political landscapes, levels of control, and the intended messages to both domestic and international audiences. Nathuram Godse, a former member of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh and a member of the Hindu Mahasabha, believed that eliminating Gandhi would protect Hindu interests and preserve what he considered the rightful Hindu dominance in India. But an idea is something which is not so easily killed.
The cause of the First World War that everyone points to is the assassination of Franz Ferdinand by a Serbian nationalist called Gavrilo Princip. Why does the assassination of an archduke in Sarajevo necessarily result in people, shelling each other in northern France just a few months later? What connects the dots is a series of treaties that have been signed over the past several years by lots and lots of different countries in Europe and elsewhere that promise each other that they'll back them if they're attacked by someone else. The problem about potential chain reactions and thinking you might not start them is what happens when you do start a chain reaction. What happens when, as a result of the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, Austria-Hungary decides to declare war on Serbia because they're blaming the Serbs for the assassination.
Austria-Hungary saw this as an opportunity to assert its dominance over Serbia and curb Serbian nationalism. The conflict quickly expanded beyond Europe due to the various colonial possessions and global interests of the major powers. The alliances and treaties dragged more countries into making a truly global war. Political assassinations and attempted assassinations are potent acts that have repeatedly altered the course of history. The acts date back centuries. They serve as stark reminders of the vulnerabilities inherent in political systems and the profound impact that individual acts of violence can have on society.
The attempted assassination of candidate Trump does in fact affect how the world sees the U.S. There is some concern, rightly, about gun ownership in the U.S.
President Trump is making not just a comeback, but a reassessment of the world and the things that have happened to him.
When Ronald Reagan was shot, he got a 22-point bounce in his polling numbers post the shooting. So I think it changes the game. It really puts the Biden campaign in a very, very tough position.
President Joe Biden has just announced that he is dropping out of the 2024 presidential race.
He also thanks Vice President Kamala Harris for, quote, being an extraordinary partner in all of this work.
I believe, and I think many others saw, that the split second was intervention from God.
Thanking God that it wasn't worse than it could have been. Another inch or so and he'd be dead.
He's shown clearly after the assassination attempt, he's got the heart of a lion. He's got incredible courage and fortitude.
And for him to get right back up, you know, he really did show his strength, his character.
It means literally he dodged a bullet. It means literally that he is alive and ready with new vigor to address the issues for the world.
The attempted assassination of Donald Trump was seen by many to be a conspiracy, with recordings of the Secret Service being notified of the shooter's location prior to the incident.
Look, they're all pointing.
The Atlantic, maybe the Pacific.
Yeah, someone's on top of the roof. Look. There he is right there. Right there, you see him? He's laying down, you see him?
Yeah, he's laying down.
We have criminals. We have people that
right here, right on the roof.
It's much tougher than it happened.
Right on the roof, big guy.
Up here.
Video obtained by ABC station WTAE appearing to show the alleged gunman Thomas Crooks walking the perimeter of the rally about 1 hour before the former president was shot. And the Secret Service saw him on that roof a full 20 minutes before he fired at the former president.
One can only wonder if events such as this occur due to a lapse in judgment, or whether something darker is afoot.
One of the concerns on the back of the attempted assassination is the degree to which the American democracy and the democratic process during our elections can be protected. Now, whether the Secret Service or FBI did the job they were meant to do is another concern and another issue.
The Secret Service does have a problem. They did have a problem and still do, and that is why on Monday in Washington, we will begin the hearings to not just determine what went wrong, but what it's going to take to fix this. When a person can get within 130 yards with a sniper rifle with the President of the United States and then point fingers at not knowing who is responsible is irresponsible for the Secret Service.
The attempted assassination has done nothing to quieten the venomous tone of American politics. The billboards down the road from the showground now celebrating his survival and fueling the sense that Donald Trump is America's savior.
We will make America safe again.
Perhaps we need a bit more legislation around gun control, which is certainly something that former President Obama attempted and is perhaps going to come back on the agenda.
Understanding these events within their historical context reveals the complex interplay between power, ideology, and human action, offering valuable lessons on the importance of political stability, security, and the rule of law in preserving democratic societies. Through the lens of notable historical examples, we see how political assassinations have not only changed immediate political landscapes, but also left enduring legacies that continue to shape contemporary societal and political structures.